Welcome to the week that was, but we mostly wish it wasn't, the week ending August 15th, 2025. This is a weekly roundup of the highlights and lowlights, major stories about campus anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism. This week I had about 45 stories to choose from. If something's happening in your neck of the woods, please be sure to let me know. I'm your host, Andrew Pessin. I'm a professor. Please don't hate me. For more about me and my work, visit andrewpessin.com. And for all the details about today's stories and for loads more stories not covered today, please follow me on X at Andrew Pessin. Let me start by mentioning a couple of good articles that came out this week. The folks at the Tikva Fund put out an important essay on anti-Semitism and the future of the university, and in particular Jews' place at the university as they prepare to release their own rankings of major universities from a Jewish and Zionist perspective. And the folks at Amcha Initiative, which maintains the largest database on anti-Semitic incidents at American campuses. Tammy Rossman Benjamin has an op-ed in the Washington Times this week explaining how the academic BDS movement, boycott, divestment, and sanctions, produces and promotes campus anti-Semitism. Okay, let's get to the news. George Washington University. This week, the Justice Department has found George Washington University in violation of federal civil rights law by acting, quote, deliberately indifferent to anti-Semitic discrimination, end quote, on its campus. The Department of Justice will seek immediate remediation with GWU for its civil rights violations. Harvard, always in the news. This week, lawyers for the federal government moved to dismiss Harvard's lawsuit challenging the Trump administration's efforts to prevent the university from hosting international students. The administration continued its battle by threatening to take over Harvard's patents this week. They sent a letter to the Harvard president telling him the administration planned to do a thorough review of all the patents held by the university, saying, quote, we believe that Harvard has failed to live up to its obligations to the American taxpayer and is in breach of the statutory, regulatory, and contractual requirements tied to Harvard's federally funded research programs and intellectual property arising therefrom, including patents. Meanwhile, while this was going on at Harvard, an anti-Israel mob in Harvard Square assaulted a Jewish couple. Unclear what contribution Harvard students or affiliates had in that. The University of Washington, more than 30 anti-Israel demonstrators who had occupied a building there last May by including blocking exits and entrances, causing more than $1 million worth of damage to the building and igniting fires in two dumpsters on the street. Well, they're now being investigated for potential criminal charges. The investigation comes after a recent report putting a light on the link between the radical student group that led the takeover, version of SJP, Students for Justice in Palestine, and the U.S. designated terrorist group, the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine. With respect to UCLA this past week, numerous reports are suggesting that the Trump administration is demanding a $1 billion settlement over anti-Semitism. One takes those reports with a grain of salt. Don't believe anything until it actually happens. But for some reason, lots of people are reporting that. And meanwhile, a federal judge ordered the Trump administration to partially restore some of the $500 million of science research grants it had previously suspended due to at UCLA. Regarding the growing problem of graduate student unions, a recent letter to Congress written by the National Right to Work Legal Defense Foundation accuses the United Electrical, Radio, and Machine Workers of America Union of promoting anti-Semitism on college campuses. Basically, it alleges that the union created hostile environments for Jewish graduate students at universities including MIT, Stanford, and Cornell. It asserts the union supports the boycott, divestment, sanctions movement, BDS movement, and uses these compulsory union dues to fund the activities. It also has supported the protests. And when Jewish graduate students at these universities attempted to get waivers so they don't have to pay their dues to support activity they see as hostile to them, they faced all sorts of repercussions. We'll end the top stories with a bit of good news at Dartmouth. Dartmouth is announcing a partnership with Israeli universities through a new research program. The Dartmouth chapter of Kalaniot will bring Israeli researchers to campus and foster international academic exchange. Similar chapters of Kalaniot exist at MIT, Columbia, Harvard Medical School, and the University of Pennsylvania. In the legal arena, as always, a busy week. UCLA again. A court ruled this week that UC Regent Jay Shuras must pay $150,000 of a graduate student's legal fees after Shuras unsuccessfully attempted to file a restraining order against the graduate student. And you might wonder why he was doing that. This graduate student participated along with 50 other anti-Israel protesters at a demonstration outside Shuras's home this past February. But of course, it was more than just a demonstration. They left red handprints on his garage, caution tape in his yard, and held a banner that read, Jonathan Shuras, you will pay until you see your final day. That sounds like more than just a demonstration to me. That sounds like an outright threat. Shuras filed the restraining order alleging this particular graduate student was the ringleader, but apparently was unable to prove that was the case. The effort, his lawyer said, was to prevent similar such demonstrations at his private residence in the future. University of Pennsylvania, this is a complicated legal issue, but a federal judge dismissed this week the Brandeis Center lawsuit against the Department of Education over anti-Semitism at Penn, basically on procedural grounds. In essence, the Brandeis Center was objecting to the manner in which the Office of Civil Rights had previously dismissed an earlier anti-Semitism complaint against Penn. With respect to SJP, mentioned a moment ago, Adelphi University has put its SJP chapter on probation for a year, citing the group's social media activity as promoting a degree of hatred that would make any Jewish person feel, quote, targeted and unsafe, end quote. This online activity included posts calling for Israel to burn and for keeping Zionists off our campus. The University of Pittsburgh, their chapter of SJP, is asking a federal judge to lift the 6-month suspension that had been levied upon them in the spring, back in March, to sanction the group for its many violations of campus rules and policies. The suspension is set to expire on September 18th, but the club would like to be active when students arrive on campus next week so that they can begin recruiting, obviously. We'll wait for the result of that shortly. BDS, Boycott, Divestment, Sanction Movement, a couple of wins for them this week. Norway's Sovereign Wealth Fund, which is the world's largest sovereign wealth fund, has declared that it will be divesting from 11 Israeli companies and terminating various contracts over concerns regarding the alleged humanitarian crisis in Gaza. And in Scotland, in the Jews Are Our Own Worst Enemies department, a group of Jewish academics working at universities across Scotland has called on their employers to divest from Israel and reject the IRA definition of anti-Semitism. That's the widely accepted definition, which recognizes that some forms of hostility against Israel might be count as anti-Semitic. So this group of academics published an op-ed calling for this. They said the IRA definition is weaponized to stifle criticism of Israel, a claim I believe is blatantly false, and so on. In the K through 12 arena, ever growing, ever more threatening. First, in Brooklyn, a woman who worked as a youth organizer for Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was arrested this week on charges that she urged her 25,000 social media followers to attack a public high school because Jewish students attended it. She posted a screenshot of the Leon Goldstein High School for the Sciences in Brooklyn and the caption, if anyone needs a public school in New York to attack for whatever reason, Lexus driving, Israel loving Zionists all attend here. Meanwhile, our friendly neighbors up north in Canada, the Elementary Teachers Federation of Ontario passed a resolution to create a resource on anti-Palestinian racism to be issued to every teacher in the province, basically turning any criticism of Palestinians, for example, with respect to terrorism, into a form of racism. This political framework, there's a growing effort to spread this concept of anti-Palestinian racism, and it's being used to brand core expressions of Jewish identity, including the Jewish connection to the land of Israel, as racism. And in short, quick editorial, the thing they constantly falsely accuse Jews of, weaponizing anti-Semitism to stifle criticism of Israel, they're actually doing openly and explicitly here. And do stay tuned because this effort will soon be coming to a school district near you. Parents in Chicago, meanwhile, concerned about anti-Semitism, are trying to start a new giant Jewish high school there, finding Jews unwelcome in the public school system. Professional organizations, just when you thought occupational therapy might be safe, the Canadian Journal of Occupational Therapy features an article called Anti-Oppressive Occupational Therapy During the Genocide of Palestinians, calling on all Canadian and all occupational therapists worldwide to unite in combating Israel's alleged genocide of Palestinians. And finally, anti-Semitism in general and off-campus shenanigans. The Democratic Socialists of America convention passed a resolution on Sunday that supports the Palestinian right to resist, i.e., perpetrate terror, and makes supporting Israel an expellable offense from their organization. One of the DSA's most influential members, of course, is Zohran Mamdani, the leading the New York City mayoral race. And our friendly neighbors up north in Canada, just a quick rundown of a few events over the past several months in Canada. A Jewish man was violently beaten in Montreal in front of his young children. That happened this past week. The oldest synagogue in Victoria was defaced with "Jews are evil and stop the Jews." An Ontario teacher called a Jewish girl half human. Canada's National Holocaust Monument was vandalized. Jewish-owned businesses were attacked during Passover. A kosher restaurant in Toronto was defaced with "Fuck Jews" and had its windows smashed. A synagogue in Montreal was firebombed. Two Jewish high schools in Montreal and Toronto were shot at. A synagogue in Vancouver was targeted with an incendiary device. Free Palestine protesters in Montreal called for a final solution and gave Nazi salutes, while hundreds of synagogues and Jewish sites received bomb threats. That's the news, unfortunately. Tune in next week to see what fresh horrors next week shall bring. Again, I'm your host, Andrew Pesson at andrewpesson.com, and hoping that everyone manages to keep it together until next time. See you then.